All across the world, there seems to be some sort of energy crisis happening. In Lebanon, for example, they have blackouts across the whole country. It's only starting to resolve itself right now. In China, in most of the provinces, only certain hours of the day can you use electricity. In the UK, they had the fuel shortage and had people fighting in service stations just to fill up their tanks. In Europe, they have shortages and price hikes of over 400% on liquefied natural gas just to heat up their home. And winter hasn't really started yet, so it's going to get worse. So what's going on? How did we get here? How bad will it get? Well, I'm going to explain to you exactly those things. And also, I'll explain the final economic impact it will have on our economy. And the results of this, looking from history, are going to seriously shock you. It's not good. So, how did we get here? Well, let's begin with COVID itself. It seems like everything starts with COVID. But during the heart of COVID, in April 2020, we actually had an excess of oil. Oil went to -40. So for oil producers, the biggest oil companies in the world, everyone that's involved in creating oil, they actually dialed down their production. And from that point on, they've been sort of traumatized since. No one wants to sell oil for -40. So they've done all that they can to stop actual increases in production in case we ever get locked down again. So that is one of the factors that has led to this energy crisis so far. Secondly is a change in politics. As you know, there was a US election in 2020 and Biden is now the president. During his campaign, he actually mentioned that he would ban fracking, the production of oil, with the fracking technique.
Transition from the oil industry, yes. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
But he hasn't completely made good on that yet. But just with that alone was enough to scare the oil producers, such as the major energy companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, to stop the level of energy production in case we got into a situation where the politics and the government would make more bans on energy production. On top of that, just the general political landscape has changed to something that's more green friendly, with ESG, which is environmental sustainability and governance mandates. Financial companies or fund managers now only invest in companies that are green and cannot invest in companies that are creating fossil fuels and hydrocarbons and carbon emissions. So fund managers, the world's largest fund managers like Blackrock and Vanguard and State Street have had to tell their investments, the companies, the oil companies, that, hey, unless you make changes, we can't invest the country's pension funds into your companies. Naturally, companies like Chevron and ExxonMobil and all the major oil companies have paid attention. These fund managers are able to put board members according to their will, and they've done just that. And with those board members, now they have influence over the executive decisions on the major oil corporations, which means that now the financial system itself is also yielding an influence on reducing the oil production. So how much is this reduction in oil production? It's a bit of rhymes. Let me explain. That is, well, for many of these energy companies, they are no longer investing in exploration. Some of them at all. For example, BP will be stopping all exploration in foreign countries. They will also reduce their oil production by 40% by 2030. That's a lot. That's a massive drop in oil production. And that's just one of the major corporations that are part of our oil complex or our energy complex. A 40% drop in less than 10 years. That's what we're looking at, and that's just one of them. Think about that for a moment. Now, we're all still driving with cars and trucks, oil-powered. Imagine if we're getting 40% less fuel in our supply. How much would the price skyrocket? But if you haven't noticed yet, I don't mean to be snarky at all, but if you look at the price of oil, and that's partly why I made this video. I went to the pump to fill my car the other day and I was shocked. And I said, man, I gotta make the video on this. And I also wanted to make it after some time too. But needless to say, it was shocking to me too. This is one of the highest fuel bills I've ever had. And I'm sure if you filled up your car recently, you would have felt that too. Maybe if you looked at your heating bill, you're feeling that too. And that's why I'm making the video. All across the world, people are feeling it. People are having no power in their homes. People cannot afford to keep warm during winter that's coming up. And there are a lot of harsh winters in northern China, in Europe, and of course other places. This is only starting. The level of increase in natural gas and oil, same thing. The mandates and that sort of stuff, the lack of production in those areas, it applies across the board. People are experiencing shortages in energy and suffering all across the world. And as winter comes, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, this is going to increase. The prices, the demand for these fossil fuels, the energy is going to increase too. If you thought the price of petrol and natural gas was high enough, then get prepared for more. In Europe itself, they have 5 times higher natural gas prices than anywhere in the world. The US is $5.50 for natural gas. In Europe, it's $25 to $30. Even more in China. They have $35 plus for the same amount of natural gas. In India, they right now have coal shortages. They're going to run out of electricity anytime now. Right? So you add all these things up, and we're looking at severe supply constraints on all of energy. It's not just going to affect our economy, but our way of life, our ability to keep the lights on. And you can only see me because I have lights in this building on, right? I probably can't even make a YouTube video without the energy to make it. So that goes to show that every single part of the economy is going to be affected by this. But there is one very interesting phenomenon when electricity, energy, or oil and natural gas prices go up, is that we start as a society, as people, looking for alternatives, looking for a way to get around the prices. One thing is, before I move on to the real devastating effects on our economy from this, is that natural gas in Europe is $25 to $30. Now, that's equivalent in terms of burning that up. If a power plant was to burn up that natural gas and switch over rather to burning gasoline or petrol, it would be equivalent to a $200 barrel. So, in other words, the cost of natural gas is so high. If that company or that power plant was to switch to burning petrol to gasoline, at the same price, that would be $200 barrel of oil. And those power plants can switch to oil. That's the thing. So right now, oil is $80, $80 plus dollars. Imagine if oil goes to $200, because that could drive the price of oil to meet natural gas. That is potentially what we're looking at. So if you're reading news outlets that are saying we're going to get $100 oil, I'm saying we're going to get over $100. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm not saying it's $200 oil, but we're going to go north of $100. That's my prediction. I do feel it's an easy one. So imagine a world, let's say a bit of an exaggeration, but let's just go with it, for $200 oil. What is that world going to look like? What is the cost of you driving around going to look like? What is the cost of food arriving at your supermarket with that going on? What's the cost of your Amazon delivery? In fact, what's the cost of making food? Because actually, when you make food, you require fertilizer to make food. But to make fertilizer, that requires natural gas. So natural gas, some sort of energy, is required to make food itself. Now, we are reducing the production of energy faster than we can increase the production of green energy. So what that means is before we actually increase the green energy, our economy will be operating with lesser and lesser energy. And we're going to be able to produce less and less things, products and services. Our economy, whether we like it or not, will contract because we're going to be using less energy to try to produce the same amount of goods. That just ain't happening. And then we add on to the fact that high prices itself at some point cause a thing called demand destruction. When gas is $200 a barrel, you're not going to take your road trip. You're not going to start driving to work. You're going to try to think about work from home. In fact, your boss may actually encourage you. Maybe you won't be using so much of the electricity in your office too. They're going to be happy. Your boss is going to be happy about that. We're going to stop our consumption of energy. Well, it may be a good thing. Maybe we're going to be more efficient, but maybe we're just going to reduce the demand, reduce the consumption in our economy. And what that means is that our economy is going to get smaller. We're going to head into a recession. And if we study into history, the 1970s actually, with a similar energy crisis, had exactly that. They had recession, they had stock market crashes, right? And so they also have producers that weren't willing to produce or actually send enough oil to the rest of the world. And that was enough to cause recession, inflation, stagflation, interest rates that resulted in over 15% in order to save the whole financial system. Do we need to increase interest rates to 15%? Well, I won't explain this video. I'll have to leave that to the next video because that's another major story altogether. If you want to, check that out, hit the subscribe button, and that will ensure that you watch the next videos that's coming up. Now, this is actually the biggest economic story right now because it's going to get worse. People are going to freeze in their homes. People may starve, especially in third world countries where this has an even more acute effect. Right? People will have no electricity in their homes. So this is a far, far bigger issue than you may realize. And also, everything in the economy requires energy to make, including food itself, including running the factories. China itself has less and less power. They can't make as many clothing. They can't make as many goods. And you know what? We're not getting enough stuff too. And we're already not getting enough stuff in the supply chain, with the supply chains. There's already a supply chain crisis. This is going to increase that and increase the cost of living. Will this force the Federal Reserve into raising interest rates and crashing our economy even more? If the oil prices weren't enough to crash our economy, what about the increased interest rates to stop the inflation? That's what really scares me. And I hope that you are also not necessarily scared, but understanding and aware of this and making preparations in terms of how you can have, make sure your home is warm and heated and have spare fuel and that sort of stuff and spare food, just actual protection, and also for your financial security too. How are you looking after maybe your property portfolio or your stock portfolio? How are you protecting yourself? That's why, I try to inform you guys on this channel with these things because many of these things are really fantastical. Wow, $200 oil over $100, that's really crazy story. But also you should look at protecting yourself. Maybe you want to look at actually making money from this situation. Full disclosure, I've actually invested money into natural gas. I've got a position in there for a few $1,000s, and if it goes up, I will make some money. I'm not talking my book, but I'm just saying you got to do something to protect yourself financially. And that's the only thing I can think of right now. So anyway, I do thank you for watching. Share. I hope you got something out of it. And if you liked the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos just like this, covering the most important issues in the world. Anyway, with that, I'll see you in the next one.